Get ready, because what's happening today between France and China is much more dangerous than what appears in the headlines. Everyone said that Macron's visit to China was just a routine visit, but in reality, behind the scenes, this visit was one of the most sensitive ones. And the tension is between two powers that know very well the future of the world economy will be decided exactly in the next few years. Macron went to China with a huge delegation, including ministers, company heads, and luxurious gifts, but in reality he went, and he knows that all of Europe is on the edge of the abyss. He knows very well that China today is the only party capable of saving Europe or burying Europe for good. China is growing day by day to the point that it has reached a level today where it cannot be stopped at all. Europe is drowning from every side, and the dangerous thing is that Macron still acts as if he is living in the era of the French Empire today or just yesterday. He threatened China with high tariffs, so what happens? Of course, what if Europe actually imposes these huge tariffs on Chinese products? Who will collapse first? Will it be China or the European people? We have some very important details today. Stay with us. Dear viewers, peace be upon you and God's mercy and blessings. Welcome to our renewed meeting today, God willing. In this episode of the Certain Opinion series, dear viewers, everyone, follow this news. The news about the visit made by the French President Macron to China about 2 days ago. This visit was accompanied by a very large delegation. It included 6 French ministers and 35 CEOs of major French companies such as Airbus, Danone, and others. And most importantly, the visit was not only to achieve French interests, but also to achieve the interests of all of Europe. Macron said in one of his statements about this visit, he said, we want Europe to be respected as a key partner for China. In short, this visit, if we summarize the goals of this visit, we will find that it mainly focused on 2 objectives. The first objective is that France, or Europeans in general, want China to distance itself from Russia, not to support Russia in this war in Ukraine. Moreover, they want China to use its influence with Russia and to pressure Russia to give up its well-known conditions, the Russian conditions, in order to stop this war. And the second objective is that they want China to reduce its exports to Europe and increase its imports from Europe so that this huge trade deficit does not remain, whether with France or with the European Union in general. Because if we talk about the trade balance between China and France, we find that France imports about $45 billion annually from China, while it exports only $35 billion to China. So there is a very large trade deficit reaching $10 billion, which is a huge number. But what's more dangerous isn't this, it's something else. What Macron sees and what all the other leaders in Europe see is China's trade balance with the European Union as a whole, not just with France alone. Because they find today that China exports to the European Union about $520 billion, while it imports from it about $270 billion. That means we're talking about a trade deficit exceeding $250 billion, a huge number. And here we can't overlook a very important point, which is that the Europeans, just like the Americans, are the ones who made China. They are the ones who turned China into a huge commercial giant that is now devouring all the global markets. Because at one point in time, China was attracting European companies to move their factories from Europe to the mainland. Thousands of European and American companies also moved their factories to China, seeking cheap labor, seeking inexpensive workers. That's why Macron is now making demands of China, And these demands are creating a very big international competition and conflict today, whether with Germany or with various countries, whether in Europe or elsewhere. For example, if Morocco, for instance, makes a mistake, very important steps with China, such as establishing a Chinese industrial zone in Tangier and opening factories with China that are mainly aimed at benefiting from the geographical location that Morocco offers, thus covering both African and European markets. Now, Macron wants to move these factories to France. The European Union set a minimum production rate of 70% for a range of products. The most important of these products is cars. The European Union set a goal that 70% of cars, and among a range of products sold within the European Union, they must be made locally in one of the European Union countries. In order to reduce dependence on China, that's why we find that Macron's first demand was that he wants China to move part of its production to France. He wants China to relocate some factories to France, especially factories producing solar panels and electric cars. And the second demand, which is strange, is that he asked China to give France some of the secrets of electric car manufacturing and solar panel production. He wants technological secrets, and some people might be surprised by this demand. France, which used to be a global leader in various industries, France that always took pride in its universities and distinguished scientists in all scientific and economic fields and so on, today it is asking China to give it the secrets of electric car manufacturing and solar panels. This means that France is no longer able to access this technology. That's it. It has reached a point where it can't do that anymore. And that's because China has gone far in this field of batteries and electric cars and everything related to solar energy and so on. This development is moving at a tremendous speed today, and these European and French companies can't keep up with this progress. Maybe America with Elon Musk can keep up with that and sometimes even surpass it, but China offers it at lower prices. All the experts today say that in about 10 or 20 years from now, the world won't recognize the cars moving on its streets, unless they're from Chinese companies. The whole world is convinced of this, meaning there's no room to compete with these Chinese companies. Imagine with me, we're talking about this part specific to electric cars. Imagine with me that these major European countries, we're talking about countries like France, Germany, and others, leading countries. Each of these countries owns 1 or 2 or maybe 3 or 4 car brands at most. But how many does China have? More than 60 brands specializing in electric cars. It has more than 200 registered companies specializing in electric car manufacturing, and among them, 60 companies or 60 brands are global leaders promoting their products worldwide. So this is an absolute fact, meaning there is absolutely no room to compete with China in this field. So what is Macron asking from China today? He is asking them to open factories in France to produce these cars, because China exports a very large number of electric cars to Europe, and it means they will take over the world with these cars. So France wants to make itself a center for producing these Chinese cars and then export them to other countries. The European Union wants these cars to be produced in France. But even more than that, Macron wants to get the secrets of these cars to give them to his companies like Renault and Peugeot so they can compete with China. Is that possible? Logically, would China accept that? Macron and the French delegation, it's true, he received a very warm welcome in this car, but here, pay close attention to the most important thing that happened during this reception. Macron presented the Chinese president with some gifts, a silk scarf from the famous French company Hermès, and he also gave him a bottle of champagne from the Champagne region. Meanwhile, what did the Chinese president present? He made a promise. He promised Macron that in 2027, which is about a year or more from now, he would give France a pair of pandas to be placed in a French zoo. The British newspaper Financial Times mocked this visit, saying that Macron went with Hermes scarves as gifts and came back only with promises to get a panda. So he gave gifts. The newspaper said that Macron received a grand welcome in China, meaning a lavish reception, but it was hiding a lot of tension beneath the surface, because the visit did not achieve any of its final goals. They took pictures of exchanging gifts, signed some agreements, which we will talk about today. Today in France, they feel disappointed because Macron did not even succeed in convincing China to buy French Airbus planes. Imagine, even though China has a plan to buy 500 civilian transport planes, Macron went to China to try to convince the Chinese to buy them from French Airbus. He has been communicating with the Chinese about this for a while. But up until now, China hasn't decided yet from whom it will buy these planes, whether from French Airbus, American Boeing, or even from this Russian company that has recently re-emerged strongly. So China always keeps this issue aside as a card of strength in its hand with the Europeans and as a negotiation card with the Americans. During this visit, 12 agreements were signed, but they're not about Airbus, and they definitely don't achieve the goals that Macron came for. There was a cooperation agreement in education, in culture, in agriculture, and in the protection of panda animals. But the real agreements regarding the aircraft and electric car deals, the trade balance, and so on did not come. Imagine with me, there was an agreement called Cooperation in Population Aging, a partnership agreement, a cooperation agreement on population aging, because after the year 2030, China will see a significant increase in the number of elderly people. It will have millions of people suffering from aging. So what does it want from France? Does it want France to help it manage this issue? Through what means? By establishing nursing homes for the elderly, by transferring what is called geriatric medicine to China, perhaps also benefiting from France's experience regarding pension systems, things like that. That's all France can really offer. France came with 12 agreements that are considered ordinary and don't really add significant value to the visit. Why? Is this because of China? It's not because China doesn't want that, it's just that this is all France can offer China. They don't have anything else to offer except things like this. Luxury goods, which are now originally made in China, and alcoholic beverages like champagne, which can easily be substituted from other global markets. It's strange. The biggest proof of the failure of this visit is that as soon as Macron returned to Paris, he made a statement threatening China with tariffs similar to those Trump imposed on China. He means in case China does not respond to France's demands, the ones we mentioned, France will impose huge tariffs on China. Macron described this issue as a matter of life or death. He said France cannot keep importing all the time. These Chinese companies must be on European soil. That's what he said. What's strange is that Macron asks things from China and then threatens China as if he's leading a superpower capable of turning the tables. So what if the European Union imposes high tariffs on Chinese products? What will happen and who will be affected by that? The one affected? Here, it will never be China unity. China will lose some money, some exports, but Europe and the European people will be the biggest losers. And who will pay the bill? Prices will go up in Europe, in almost everything, in phones, in electronics, in electric cars, in batteries, in clothing, in solar energy systems, in machines for industrial production, even in industry itself. Dozens or even hundreds of products will be affected in France. Their prices will go up in France by 40 or 50% or even more. the European people will find themselves facing a new inflation crisis. And the first ones to pay the price will be the French people or the European people in general. The French people recently, since Macron became the president of France, they suffered from the COVID-19 pandemic crisis. Then after that, they suffered from the crisis of this Ukraine war, the consequences of this Ukraine war, and then they suffered from the crisis that I consider a scandal and a disaster, the pension file crisis. And now preparations are being made to face two upcoming crises. The crisis with China that I mentioned, and the major crisis when these people are involved in a major war against the Russians. It's very serious that Macron is threatening China as if China were a third world country, as if China were one of the African countries. China has very great plans. Today, no one can stop China except God Almighty. Of course, China can never give France or Europe these industrial and technological secrets that Macron is demanding today, because these are secrets. This is part of the Chinese plan. It's the secret of China's superiority. It's China's future. No one can give up their future, their own future, and Macron is asking China to give up its future for the sake of Europe. Is that reasonable? So, what will the outcome be? Certainly, France will impose high tariffs on China, and who will pay the bill? The French people, France, Europe. In fact, we are heading into very dangerous times. We don't know how Europe might overcome these foolish actions. So tell me in the comments, how do you see these Macronian threats? And where exactly do you think France is headed? And don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. Peace be upon you and God's mercy and blessings. See you next time.